welcome to episode 100 of Marriage on a Tightrope. I'm Allan.
And I'm Katie, and we're still married.
Can you believe it?
No.
Well, is it a big deal, or is this just kind of a numerical, like this is just what happens when you go from 99 to 100?
That's right. I think that we put too much pressure on ourselves to make this a really good episode because we haven't recorded it, and it's been a month since our last episode came out.
I know, and the last episode, the topic was so charged and kind of an emotional topic and difficult for a lot of people that hopefully no one thinks out there like, are they okay? Are we okay? Are we okay?
I think so.
I'm not convinced.
I do have a soundbite from the very first episode that maybe we should play.
Yeah, and I think that is where we decided to go with this episode was let's take a look at the last 3 years. And this is not, you know, those sitcoms, every so often when the writers don't have any ideas for an episode, they'll do like a flashback episode where it's, you know, in Friends, all the people sitting on the couch, and then Joey will say like, oh, remember the time where Rachel did this? And then they'll just play the clip from the previous episode. We don't want this to fully be that, because those are kind of mail-in episodes. And the opposite is true here. We've actually put a lot of thought and effort into what we're going to play, and we're not going to play a lot of clips, just a couple of clips from a few previous episodes. But then also kind of the theme of then versus now, 3 years ago versus today. We sat down and interviewed a few people that we met very early on.
Right. So these couples, within the first 6 months of us doing the podcast, we met them and they reached out to us. We went to dinner, or we met them at a meetup, or we talked to them online, and we wanted to just check in with them to see where they are now, where they were then and where they are now. So that was a fun, those were a fun few phone calls to make. To talk to them about their journey. And the purpose of doing that, I think, was a couple things. One, we did want to check in with our friends. And two, we wanted to let you know that over the years, especially those of you who have been with us for a while, everyone goes through something different, and the outcomes can be vastly different from anyone else. And we have 3 different couples with 3 completely different stories. So hopefully you'll enjoy those phone calls as we catch up with them.
And maybe a good place to start this entire episode is to play a clip from before we started meeting couples. When we released the very first episode of Marriage on a Tightrope, towards the end, we talked a little bit about, hey, you want to go to dinner? Katie will make you cookies. I'm capable of making cookies, but let's be honest, no one wants to eat my cookies. You know that we are here to talk to you directly. We'd love for you to email us at marriageonatightrope@gmail.com. You can address that to Katie or to Allan or to both of us. If you have any questions, if you want to just talk, we do live in the Salt Lake area, and so if you are in Salt Lake, Utah, I mean, we're married with 4 children, so it may be hard to organize time sometimes with how busy that can be. But we'd love to meet up as well if you feel that would be helpful. Katie, did you think that the floodgates were going to open when we released that first episode with that invitation?
I don't think I had any idea what exactly people were going to do with the first episode. I seriously thought it would be just kind of this floating cloud somewhere out there in podcast land. And then if someone listened to it, great. If someone didn't, that's fine. I actually didn't know Bill Reel at the time. I hadn't even heard or listened to Mormon discussions. So I didn't know that there was any type of community there. So, and I had 0 interaction with any post-Mormon community. Again, there was no mixed faith community that we knew of. And so I think that it was pretty shocking, the response we got.
And pretty quickly, we received emails, turning into text messages and invitations to like, hey, we'd love to go to dinner. What do you remember about those first few dinners?
Well, I remember that like in the first episode, we wanted to be sort of mysterious. We
weren't ready to be this is
public.
Who we are. We didn't share our last name.
No.
I think we assumed that people could figure it out, but we didn't. Right. We didn't come out and say it.
Right. We didn't want to come out and say, and we didn't have an Instagram. We didn't have a Facebook group. In fact, that didn't come till like a year later.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, we just were kind of like, well, we're just going to put our stuff out there and fly under the radar. But then those first few dinners that we had, the very first two couples we met came together and they were friends, and we went to dinner with them. And oddly enough, not oddly, but it's just coincidentally enough, we've stayed really good friends with those two couples over the years. In fact, we're going for spring break. We're all going to Oregon together.
3 years later, and like the very first couples that we went out with, we're very close friends with now. There were a few dinners early on, and really, I know that this feels like it's a reminisce episode, but there's a few lessons to learn, I think, for us and for everybody listening. But when you open up and you start to meet with other people that are in the same situation, it does something. It heals, because now you're recognizing there are other people in our same situation. And not only are there other people, there are other amazing people. Those first two couples are a really good example. Like, we're very close to them because I feel like they make me want to be a better person. I'm thinking of them specifically. Like, they're really amazing, service-oriented people that really make me feel good. They're so positive.
Yeah.
But there was a few dinners. Do you remember one dinner specifically that did not go as planned? I think maybe the first few dinners we had went so well that we were just expecting, like, hey, this is just going to roll forward. But there was one dinner specifically that didn't go quite as we had hoped.
Right. I think that I'll say this, we were very naive in the beginning. We were naive to think that we were there to help save people's marriages.
Right.
Because we're not, what was our goal was, we can help you save your marriage. And we weren't therapists, and we never claimed to be professionals. But one of the things that we have always thought in our mind is, well, it's working for us, and we can model how it can work for other people, which is good and all, except for other people have problems that we've never dealt with. And other people have underlying issues in their marriage that they can't work out. And then you add a faith crisis on top of it and a transition. And so I think in that first year, one thing that we learned that is really important for everyone to know is that, one, your journey doesn't have to look like ours. And two, it's okay if it takes you down a path that you are not expecting. And no one should tell you different. And I think that Allan and I were like, hyper focused on helping couples. And then we realized that, it's in their own hands. We can only do so much. And I think that's why I loved calling up these three couples to see where they are now versus when they... Oh, is this Tiana?
Hi, guys.
Hi, Preston.
Yes.
Oh, it's been so long. How are you guys?
Good.
Good.
Great. I can't believe we're at 100.
It is. It's 100. It's crazy. And, well, first of all, thanks for letting us call you to do an update. It's been probably 2.5 years since we first met you.
Black Sheep Cafe.
Yeah, it was Black Sheep Cafe. I think you guys came to Allan's show after.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So fun. That was a great date.
We thought we would ask for our whole audience to hear, where were you in your faith journey when you first met us at the restaurant? And then one of you can tell us that, and then the other one can tell us where you are today.
Preston was more on the board of, Allan, and I felt like Katie and I were, similar. I was sad, maybe, that Preston was going down this road, and I wanted all the support I could have, and I felt like just having another couple that was going through the same thing was just so incredible. But I just felt so alone.
I think for me, I'm remembering that dinner, and I was basically to the point where I was out. I knew that I didn't believe anymore, but we were still living the lifestyle, going to church, doing those things. And we were finally, I would say, getting to a point between Tiana and I that we could feel really comfortable talking about where we were. that to me was like a big turning point that I think your podcast really gave for us. Was like, she'd been telling me about this podcast for some time, and then one morning I went for a run and like listened to your first episode and just realized I need to stop faking this, and I need to start just having honest conversations. And I think that while it was really scary for you, Tiana, it was also like, finally, we're not talking about this. We're actually confronting it.
Yeah, I remember walking away from that date night and thinking, oh my goodness, I saw a side of my husband that was like so freeing, so open. He was talkative like immediately because he like wasn't faking it.
Yeah, I just felt really excited to have someone to actually talk to about it, and that was someone on the same level of us. So yeah.
That is a great description, and it was a really fun night, actually, and you both were very vulnerable and opening up to us, and, we won't go into all of the details of that because there are so many details surrounding just your own story, but so you just in summary started out like kind of mixed faith with us in the similar spaces. And where has it led you? Where are you now?
Well, I'll speak for me, and then you talk for you. So I would say I've navigated a lot, but I'm somewhat still in the same area where I don't believe in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or kind of what I grew up believing in terms of God, the gospel, those types of things. But where I've navigated or changed is just starting to like evolve, or allow myself to evolve and take in other ways of thinking. So I feel like more than ever, both Tiana and I love reading or listening to books, podcasts, everything and anything that kind of explores, how we can be good humans, be good parents, and connect with people, and leave the world better than how we came.
Yeah, taking all the like good things like charity and love and just like all these wonderful things that we learned from the church, and just building upon those things that we find important. And
but for you specifically, how would you describe where you're at now?
So I'm pretty much in the same boat. I would say that I don't believe in the church as it states that it's the one and only true church, but I really love what good stuff comes from it. The community I really love and probably miss a little bit. I think we realized last night that when we left, I guess I need a lot of validation, and when we left, I left getting validation from a church standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that having a religion or a faith community is a really good way to ground you.
Yeah.
Or anyone, really. Or it is a way to feel grounded and feel like you're doing the right thing and feel valid about your life. And now I think that, at least we talked about this last week, what we realized was it was a pretty big shift or paradigm shift to say, oh no, now I'm responsible for deciding whether or not I'm doing the right thing.
Oh, and responsible for our kids too.
Instead of looking to this organization or belief system.
Yeah.
And in some ways that makes you more intentional with the time and the resources and what you do want to do with them, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we get to decide what's a swear word and what's not. You know?
Right.
At our house, can't is a swear word. And hate is a swear word. Never, absolutes are swear words. There's some other ones too, but
yeah, we went through it. It's been a while now, but maybe 2 years ago, we went through a whole process where we kind of defined our new family values, and we're always like looking for ways to reinforce those values, either through experiences or through what we're reading with our boys. We have 2 boys, or anything else. So yeah, definitely forces you to be more intentional, I would say.
This is exactly why we wanted to highlight you guys and the difference between before when we first met and where you are at now, because I think a lot of times the people that are listening to this sometimes can feel uncomfortable or threatened by couples that started mixed faith and end up with both spouses out. And we love giving you that voice right now to be able to express, well, this is where we're at, and this is what we're doing with our family, and hopefully the happiness and healthiness of how you're approaching things is shining through.
I probably was one of those people that like was super scared. Like I couldn't, like it was really hard to imagine like how we would survive living in a mixed faith. Like that was really scary.
Well, I think I can't speak for you two or anyone else that's in mixed faith, but I think it is extremely difficult. But like one thing that I tried my absolute hardest to do when I started to come out and be more honest with Tiana about where I was at was to not imply that she needed to come there too. Before we actually announced or really talked to our families or anything, you were the first person that kind of went down a path of then deciding that you were done and like openly saying it out loud.
Yeah, I said it before you did.
Yeah.
Basically.
But I was definitely like the starting point where I had questions first, for sure. Like it dated back, to 4 or 5 years before we met you two. And then I went through like 3 or 4 years of just kind of trying to go through the motions and hopefully get my faith back somehow, some way.
I think Preston was actually kind of like caught off guard when I actually said I can't do it anymore. Can't is a swear word.
Oh, you're police. Your kids are your police now, so they know exactly.
Very mom.
I love it so much. You both have been such a loving, supportive couple, and when I think back to like those early days, I just like Allan and I just both think you two are incredible. We have been able to see you a few times after at like some post-Mormon meetup things and some conferences. And every time we see you, you just radiate so much positivity, and you're obviously being intentional with your time and your marriage and with your kids. And I feel like you're a really great example of how you can transition to a different journey and do it so well. So just thank you so much for letting us pick your brain and talk to you. And I think that this will resonate for some of our listeners who are now in that space as well.
Oh, wow. That's such lovely compliments.
I know, because I don't know if we would have, if you guys didn't have that podcast, I don't know what out there would be so incredibly helpful to, like, it's okay if you're in a mixed faith marriage. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, no matter where you're at, there's a way to navigate this.
Yes. And, like, you guys were the ones who, like, were the example. Like, you saved, you have saved multiple marriages, I am sure.
Well, we are trying to highlight you guys right now. So
stop.
We're remiss if we didn't thank you two. Just giving
brave enough to start a podcast and be so open about something that like is so hush hush, and like we're afraid to even tell like a member of our family, and here you guys are just amazing.
Yeah, and more than anything, it gave us dialogue to then start to have our own dialogue.
Yeah.
Which was the most important part to the whole thing. Is just how do you talk about this? What can you say? How can you do it without threatening your relationship, our marriage? Like my biggest fear was I can't not believe, because that will mean that my marriage will end.
Yeah.
And it opened up a way for us to talk through and work through everything. So
you asked, like, where we started and where we ended up, like, it was definitely, like, divorce was definitely on my mind before. I didn't know how we could do it, to now where we like have a whole new level of like openness and love, and like I feel like we're so much better together. Like,
oh, I feel like our marriage is more authentic, or it entered into a point where it became to feel inauthentic because I wasn't bringing my full self, because I no longer believed in something. And so we had to find a way to break through and get to that level of authenticity again. And whether you ended up believing or not, or I didn't, I think that whatever pathway we went, it allowed us to start to be open to each other in a more vulnerable way than we ever had been.
yeah.
Being open with each other. It doesn't matter where the belief is. It matters that you are showing up as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you both so much for letting us just call you and just chit chat, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Whenever COVID is over, we need to go to the Black Sheep again and get dinner and go to some more comedy sport.
Oh, amen.
Let's do it.
We'll make a date.
Let's do it.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Mary.
Good. Hey. Dave is just putting one of our kids back to bed. The littlest one. So he'll be here in just a minute. Here's Dave. Hi.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
We're good. Long time no chat.
I know, it's been a while. It's been a couple years.
It has been.
Just first of all, thank you so much for doing this. You know, we just wanted it to be short and sweet. And, you know, we wanted to ask you, we met you guys a couple years ago. We had you on the podcast and interviewed you. And so we thought we would ask you the question, remind all of us where you were back then. Were you mixed faith, or were you both in? And then tell us where you are today in your faith journeys.
Back when we talked, we were both physically in. We were still going to LDS Church. I was an active believing member, and Dave was not. And I now I'm kind of like, I'm still an active member, and I'm kind of working on the believing part. I have gone through a faith crisis, and I'm still working on it. I'm still figuring out where I'm going to land on that.
What about you, Dave?
I still attend LDS Church as a supportive feature, but we moved right after our interview with you guys. So in our new ward, everybody who wields any power knows that I'm not a believing member. I attend a different church a couple times a month, and I'm on the financial committee for it and all that jazz. I'm pretty happy and content where I'm at.
Dave, what church do you attend now?
The Church of Satan. No, I'm just kidding. The Episcopal Church.
What are some of the things you like about that? Can we ask?
The music is good. They serve wine. I'm just kidding. I shouldn't. Very, very small quantities. So one of the mottos of the Episcopal Church is faith and reason, and so they make a lot of room for people to be on the spectrum. Anywhere in the faith spectrum that you might be, there's a home for you there, and they're affirming of people of different sexual orientations and lifestyles, and the main focus there is loving basically everyone, and that's something I need to work on, so I'm there.
Well, that was a nice summary.
And it was.
I think most of our, if not all of our listeners, can get on board with that.
Mary, have you attended with Dave?
Yeah, so we always do church together. So 2 times a month.
She's super supportive.
I believe
and
it.
he is super supportive too. So yeah, I go, and like a lot of the things that Dave mentioned about the Episcopal Church are things that I like about the Episcopal Church.
Yeah.
So we can both see some good things about each other's faith home and support each other.
So, Mary, you mentioned that you're kind of figuring things out right now. I don't even know if this is the right question to ask. Where do you want that to go? Like, if you could wave a magic wand and fix this or change that, like, what do you want to work for you?
I want to just feel as sure and secure about my faith as I did in the past, which I don't know if that's possible. Also, I want to find joy in doing the things that I used to do in the church that right now have a lot of difficult emotions tied up with them. So, yeah, if I could wave a magic wand, just go back to where I was 2.5 years ago. Be happy in my faith, secure in my faith.
Mary, something that I really love about both of you is that I think that you've allowed each other to take this faith journey together, but separately, as your husband's, gone to the Episcopal Church and you support him, and he's supported you in staying in and figuring out your own faith. And I think that it's important for listeners to hear that there is no one way, right way, or wrong way to do this, because everybody, it's going to look different. This is different than what we've talked to other couples in the past about. And I think it's really beautiful that you're trying to find your own way and feel like you're secure or sure in that. Does it make you nervous, though, like thinking that may never come, or that it may be found in somewhere else than the church?
Yeah. That's why this is taking me so long.
Yeah.
To be honest. Because it's uncomfortable work trying to work through this, and so I avoid it a lot of the time. I frequently find myself just doing the bare minimum, chugging along, and not really addressing faith issues. And so, it's taking me some time to work through this. And I'm meeting with a counselor, and she's just kind of gently nudging me to address these things more than I have in the past, because it will make me happier. Ignoring your spiritual life isn't a recipe for happiness, even if there are some difficult things that are part of that spiritual life. So that's where I am at right now.
Oh.
But I agree. There's no one way to do this. Like, every person that I've talked with in a mixed faith marriage, their story is different. I have not found one that's just like ours. And, that kind of speaks to me of God's acknowledging that we're all individuals. We're all different. There is no one plan fits all of his children. So,
for somebody that sometimes ignores the faith side and spiritual side of your own journey, you are surely a very committed moderator of our Facebook group. This is a very public acknowledgement and thank you, because Mary, for those that don't know, Mary has been from the beginning one of our most active moderators, and the reason why that's important to call out is that you're taking, especially knowing where you're at right now and where the last few years have been, you're taking it upon yourself to try to make that group a safer place for everybody in every single aspect of their faith journey. So thank you very much for your efforts on that. And I know, Dave, officially you are a moderator too, but let's be honest, Mary does all the work.
She has a belt that she cuts a notch in every time she deletes a comment.
Not true. Larger than specific faith issues is the aspect of how two people make a marriage work. And so the reason why I'm able to be so involved in the Marriage on a Tightrope group is because I see it as trying to help marriages work. And I largely ignore a lot of the faith issues that are brought up in the group,
and just think about this from a relationship perspective. And sometimes I feel like I give better answers or like better advice in the group than I apply in my own marriage.
I know that we definitely do that too, Mary. You're not the only one.
Yeah, that's true. With Mary and where she's at, how it's kind of up in the air. I mean, I think all of our faith is always evolving, but how do you see your role as her husband right now, trying to support her and in what she's trying to accomplish with her own faith?
I take a pretty strong hands-off approach. That's what she wants me to do. I think it would be hard to be totally unbiased, and so, and I think even if I was, there would be a sense that maybe I wasn't. So I'm pretty hands-off. I'm ready to listen and offer support whenever it's asked for, and it is occasionally. Some journeys one must walk alone, I think, and it would behoove me to not try to work in on that, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. That was wise. And also the first time that behoove was ever used on a Marriage on a Tightrope episode. We need to follow up with you on episode 200 and see where you guys are going.
We'd love it.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much, guys. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for chatting with us. You guys have a good night.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Katie and Allan.
How are you?
So good.
Good. Thank you so much for letting us call you. Just remind us, like, where were you when we first met you? And then where you are now.
Okay. So when I first realized I was in a mixed faith marriage, like you, I looked to LDS.org for resources and found nothing and was feeling super frustrated and found some different Facebook groups. I think there's like the Believing Spouses group when I started out, and I was the believing half of the partnership, and my husband was out. I found your podcast a little while later, and it was so helpful to me because it was like the first thing that I found that had actual like sound advice, and I really loved like all the things you guys said. And when you guys first met me, like I was very much in the church. I was trying to make a go of being in a mixed faith marriage. I had some real struggles along the way just with my faith community, and some doubts were cropping up. But I remember early on in one of your podcast episodes, you mentioned some things that like were not present in your marriage and why you guys were able to make it work. And I remember thinking, oh, that's not good, because some of those things were present in my marriage. And actually, a year ago, almost to the day, we were at a meetup at Janice Spangler's house. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember
Yes,
that well.
we were. I mean, it was like February 29th. So
Right?
Yeah, we just passed the year mark, and that was the last meetup we had before COVID shut everything down.
Yeah, exactly. So that night I'd gone on a date with my husband, and we went to that meetup, and we did some other things. We went to get gelato, and anyway, I thought it was a really great night. Like, things at church had been slowly unraveling. Like, I had an incident with my bishop, and I just hadn't given myself permission to explore my doubts. I had decided that night that I was ready to dive into the rabbit hole, but I didn't tell my husband. Well, the next morning, he sat me down and explained that he wanted a divorce, which completely floored me. Like, obviously we had some issues, but the timing was really crazy with it being like the day after this meetup. And I was like, hey, I'm about to get on the same page as you, because the mixed faith marriage was a huge source of conflict for us. Mm-hmm. But by that time in our marriage, like, we had so many other things wrong besides the mixed faith marriage that it was just like there was no coming back from it. And so we separated during COVID, which was really crazy because I moved out of our marital home, and like trying to set up a house when I couldn't buy basic supplies at the store was pretty stressful. And I would say from about March until maybe July, I was in a really dark place because I was alone. My marriage had ended. I had my kids only half the time. I knew nobody. Like, I moved out of my ward. Church was canceled, so I couldn't go and meet people in my new neighborhood. I had kind of like a deep depression that I was in for a while. But I started doing yoga. My yoga studio opened back up on June 1st. And I went almost every day. And between that, and then I also joined a community on Facebook called The Unwed. And so if any of your listeners are finding themselves like in a situation where their marriages are ending, there's this really great community called Unwed, and they have events all over Utah. And I know people were still worried about COVID in the summer of last year, but I think the divorce crowd, like the separated crowd, they were just like, you know what, we are so like needing human contact.
Sure.
And so like I started going to events. Like it took a lot of courage for me to just go by myself and meet a bunch of people who I had no idea who they were. And they all knew each other, and I could see like they were a pretty tight-knit community, and it gave me a lot of hope that I could have like a really positive life as a single divorced mom. So through them, I've met some amazing people, and I've actually bumped into some fellow tightropers that recognize me from the group.
I don't know whether to be happy or no. I think that's awesome.
That's great.
And actually, one of the guys that used to be in Marriage on a Tightrope, so we're having like a triple date tomorrow night and playing like games. Like
there we go.
Like we're legit friends now, so it's really fun. Like every other weekend when we don't have our kids, we like get together and there's always something going on. So just if anyone in their mixed faith marriage is thinking that might be the case, like there is hope on the other side of it. Like I found a lot of peace with myself. I had to kind of work through my loneliness and some of those emotions, but I'm really happy now. Really, really happy.
Nicole, you have come such a long way, and I know that we haven't been there for the entire journey, but you have shared some things with us, and I'm so glad to see and hear that you are in a good place and that you are more settled now and that you have found a community to help you and to, just be there for you. And I just think that you're amazing, and this is an option for some people. Some people, it doesn't work out. Their marriages don't work out. And I think it's important for people to know that they can find happiness on the other side. So we really appreciate you allowing us to call you and just do a little check-in for our episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you guys you were there for me through some hard things.
Thank you. You are such a positive, you are a positive voice, and you are just such an awesome human being. And we just really appreciate your friendship over the years and excited to see what comes of the future ahead of you.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. Thank you, Allan.
Thanks, Nicole. It's really good to hear from you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We have met a lot of people, and one of the great things about this community is we've been able to do a lot of reach out with meetups and Facebook and Instagram, and then the podcast, of course. And it's all been positive. We meet some really amazing humans, and for the most part, we've gotten really good feedback. But there is a downside to recording.
Being super public. What are some of the downsides that you see, Katie?
One is, I think the dynamic of leadership or family listening into your podcasts. I'm at the point now where I'm pretty proud of what we've done, and I wouldn't care if anyone listened to it, but I know that people close to us have very strong feelings about things that we say. And that can be really hard for them to process themselves and not feel like they have to tell us why we're wrong or what we're doing is wrong, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's something that you don't need a podcast in order to feel the adverse effects of being open and honest. There's certainly a reality to, if you share your story, there's going to be some impacts of it. One of the things I've heard John DeLynn, Natasha Helfer say that we've said a few times is you can't unsay certain things. So if you open up and are open about where you are at with your faith or where your marriage is or your spouse is with their faith, like things can and will change. The dynamic of relationships in the family can change. The dynamic of relationships with your bishop or stake president or other members of the ward can change. And that for sure is a downside. A lot of times you can be delegitimized in the eyes of people that you're very, very close with. In fact, it seems like it's more likely the closer you are with someone, it's more likely that it's more difficult for them than for someone that's just, someone in your neighborhood, some neighbor. The closer you are to them, the reality of that, it hurting them more is there because they care so much about you.
But we hurt people, apparently, because this will be a fun little exercise. So we decided to look up our bad ratings on Apple Podcasts.
That's right.
And just to see why people gave us a poor rating. Now there's only 2 poor ratings that I can see.
If you would like to give us a poor Apple review, go ahead and go to the App Store.
That's right.
1 star, please.
But there is one that's a 1 star and one that's a 2 star. And I thought it would be fun just to read what the poor rating was about and why. So this one is on April 6th of 2020. And they said, when I first heard about this podcast, I thought it would be great. I am a lifelong member of the church and my husband is a non-member. I thought that Katie would be the voice of strength, but as I listen to this, I feel she is one step away from Allan and his path. I think you are trying to find things wrong with the conference to appease him. I think you have anxiety because of him. Find mistakes with the authorities in the church so that you, Allan, can point those out to your family so they can be on your side. I had to stop listening. I know this podcast is for some people, but I guess I'm not one of them. Oh.
Burn. Can you empathize at all with where she's coming from?
I think this one is actually... I think this one is related, so I want to read this one as well.
Sure.
This is the 2 stars by Coins and Power-Ups. Not that you're listening, but from November 23rd. Okay, so only listened to about a dozen or so episodes, bounced around a bit, starts well enough with the husband and faith transition in earlier episodes, where it felt like it was open and honest. But some of the later episodes, you can feel the condescension in the non-believer's voice, and you notice how the believing wife is slowly compromising standards to accommodate her husband. Latter episodes also started to feel more like the podcast is more about building a business around faith, differing couples, and less about helping people. Ouch! Wow.
Now, before we react to those, I just do want to say if you would like to donate to the Marriage on a Tightrope podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the first comment, I can totally see why people would feel threatened by where I am now.
Sure.
In the first episodes, I was very worried about what was going to happen with my membership and our marriage and everything. And I would say that I was very TBM. In the first episode, I say I am a true blue Mormon.
Right.
And as time has passed, I don't feel like I have come down. I think that they're thinking that I'm coming down to their level, your level.
Right. I mean, and I understand why someone in her position and where she believes, and she did say her husband, right? I don't want to assume this was the wife.
Her husband.
Okay. So she is the believing. So anyway, I can see why she would feel that way. But something that is important in mixed faith marriage is that neither side can put their side in a position of superiority.
And again, I think that you're going to get what you look for. If people are looking for someone who is rigid in their beliefs and who is staying true to the covenant path and holding on to the rod and not deviating from that, and that's what they want in their marriage, you're going to find examples of that.
Right.
Apparently, I'm not the example of it, but I think that it actually makes me kind of happy to see that there are things that, as time goes on, become less difficult for me, and that my ideas maybe expand or broaden, and that I've been me. That's the thing, guys. I have been me from episode 1. I haven't pretended to be something that I'm not. And I'm not trying to put on this face of, oh, look at me, I'm still this like super TBM and everything is amazing. I'm not pretending. And so I understand why people would feel saddened maybe that after time I don't really fit the mold that they want me to fit, which is okay because it's for me, it's not for them. And this is our journey. So that's all I'm going to say about that first comment. And again, this isn't us trying to rebuttal. I think it's just funny to read some of these and sort of laugh about why people care so much about where I am in my own journey. And then the second comment with the less about helping people and more about advertising. Wasn't that the word? What was the word they used?
Yeah, more about building a business.
Building a business. Okay, so I don't know. Is this the right time to get down to the nitty gritty?
The nitty gritty, sure.
Okay, so over 3 years, Allan, how much do you think we've made?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's probably in 3 years. It's in the 5 figures, probably. But when you talk about, made versus profited, I don't know if the right way to put it, right? There's revenue and then there's profit. When you think about all the time and money and all the dinners and meetups, and those blossom into real friendships. Yeah. And to be clear, like those are helpful for us, especially at the beginning when we were like, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're doing. But over time, if you've been listening for a few years, you're likely in a similar situation where things get easier over time.
They do.
And the podcast started in a space of, we need these microphones to be our therapist. Right. We need to record. It was helping us. And now we're to a place where the need for mixed faith-based therapy via microphones is much decreased. It's not as acute a need as it was in the past. But we see how much, this is how I feel, Katie, if you feel it any differently, we see how much of a need there is. Mm-hmm. Because you've said this recently. I heard you talking to somebody yesterday and you said this, like, we are a pit stop for many couples where all the time there are couples finding themselves in this space and there's not a lot of resources. And there's almost zero resources that are church-based, that are like put out by the church. And so we honestly feel like we don't want to stop providing a resource. But this may shock you to hear. I mean, yeah, we have 4 kids and that's busy, and I have full-time work. And we literally are taking my lunch hour right now to record. And like that, and that's okay. Like these are the choices that we're making. We're not throwing a pity party for ourselves. But I don't feel like it's bad or inappropriate to put value out into the world, and those that want to reciprocate that can reciprocate that, either through donations and honestly, we don't want to just beg for donations, and hopefully you hear that in the episodes. We don't, but we put together a workshop with a therapist, and that has very real cost and value. And so it's like, look, if you don't want to donate and you don't want to participate in our workshops or anything else that we offer, that's completely fine. Like we're not out here trying to say we're gonna make $100,000 with this. That's not.
This is not a business.
No, it's really not.
This is a service,
right?
I mean, if we're gonna be honest, the first 2 years, I don't think we even made any money I mean, barely.
Right.
I mean, it was just like donations, and that wasn't the purpose. It wasn't. And so it's fine. But if you think like the time that we put into the first 2 years was probably full-time hours every week.
Right.
Like the amount of people that reached out to us. And I saw a need and a niche for mixed faith counseling, and we came up with a way to do it with Natasha. And if that puts you off, fine, that's not for you. But don't tell that to the 100-something couples that have been through the program who all have like incredible, amazing things to say about it.
Yeah, coins and what was it? Coins and barbs. I don't remember the name.
Whatever. I just think like, if it's not your cup of tea, that's okay.
Right.
I'm confident enough to say, because we've done this for a while and we've talked to a lot of people, that we're not for everyone, and that's okay.
Katie, every so often we'll get an email from somebody that is only a couple of episodes in. We've probably had a handful of emails that say, well, it's just so good to see that Allan still believes in God and still believes in Christ's divinity.
I wonder why they would say that. Maybe we have a clip of you saying that.
It seems as though we wouldn't have just introduced a clip if we didn't. So let's go back to the first episode and listen to where I was with my beliefs. I go because it's helpful for me. I still have a faith in God and a belief in God and Christ, but it certainly has changed over the last year. I no longer say things like, I know this or I know that. I don't think you do know. I personally say, I believe in God. I believe in Christ. I could be wrong. I don't know, but it helps me to maintain that belief. And if that doesn't impact how I treat others, it is fine for me to hold on to that belief. Katie, what is it like to hear those words coming out of my mouth 3 years ago?
I want to know why you stopped believing in God and Jesus Christ.
Whoa. Wow. I mean, that's a big question. I think that's answered over the course of a number of episodes, but I think the short of it is, it turned from what I just said there in that little clip there of, as long as this belief is still helping me serve others and do well for others, I will continue to go. I will continue to believe. In episode 2, I shared an experience about a refugee woman from Africa being reunited with her husband and 5 sons that she had been separated from for 5 years. And I just happened to be at the Minneapolis airport to witness that. That was a really big emotional moment for me. And at the time, I still believed. And it re-emphasized something that I've always felt in my spiritual life, that we are the ones that God has placed here to make a difference in other people's lives. We can't wait for God to take action. We're the ones that have to take action. And even when I was a believer, I think you can attest to this, like that was my mantra, like we have to do it. So when I saw that refugee being reunited with her husband and 5 sons, when I saw that reinforced to me, like, this is the direction that I need to go with my spirituality. Well, if you really zoom in on that belief, at least my belief in that realm, it kind of takes God out of the equation for being responsible for getting things done. And that was probably a good indication of where I was headed as far as the God belief, that at first I remember talking to the bishop and stake president about how I don't believe that God intervenes in our lives anymore, that I still believe in God, but he's not actually intervening in our lives, because all of a sudden now it didn't make sense for me if God was saving one person from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, what about the 99 that died? And we've had that conversation a few times. So that's the next crack in my shelf as far as a God belief goes. And if God doesn't intervene, and that this is all not me preaching to the listener or to Katie, this is just inside of my own head. If God isn't intervening in my own mind, it's as though he does not exist, and there is no knowing that he does exist. All of that was wrapped up in spiritual experiences I felt earlier in my life that, when I went down the rabbit hole, proved to be not true. So I didn't trust the methods by which I, quote, knew that God did exist. So that's maybe 3 minutes worth of how I got there. I'd like to play this clip from the second episode and then just touch on it for 20 seconds, because I think that it ties together these common values that we have, even though there's not a God belief present. So let me play that now.
I think you read a few books, right?
Yeah, I didn't finish it, but I read a lot of Jesus the Christ. I focused more on knowing Christ and knowing his teachings during that time period, and still focus on that now. The New Testament was awesome. I read through the 4 Gospels a number of times because that's where the actual words of Christ are spoken about. That helped me really try to feel closer to God and Christ by reading his words, by praying. And I think more than anything in my change of study, it was the teachings of Christ were what really touched me. Of look how loving he is, and look how there is no exception to who he will stand up for and love. We've had family home evenings with that topic. So for me, this is a good transition into the remaining active and how it works, because when that focus for you is on becoming a better person through the teachings and example of Christ, that's what you look for when you're going to church. You can find it. Now, this clip from episode 2, I'm hoping to tie that together with where I stand today, because this really is how I feel. It's before it was service wrapped in a belief in Christ and God, and now it's service not wrapped in that, where I still very strongly believe in doing good. I don't feel I've changed as a person because of my shifting beliefs when it comes to, what priorities I place in life versus then versus now. I still very much value serving others and just doing the best that I can. Now, Katie, I would love to ask you a question. You've made reference to this a few times, a comparison here. We served in the same mission in Barcelona, Spain, and before my crisis of faith, before I left the church, we talked a few times about our desire to be mission president and mission president's wife, or mission presidents together. Well, I've heard you say a few times that you feel like this podcast is a calling for you. And can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that statement and where this calling, quote unquote, falls in the other ways that you've served in the church?
I was telling a friend of mine who is a non-member about how sad I wasn't going to be able to serve a mission in the future. And she was the one to point out that our outreach is actually larger than if we would have been mission presidents. And I had never really thought of it that way, of like this as a mission. I always felt like it was a calling. I always felt like it was something that I was being led to do, because I'm a very private person. I'm extroverted, but I'm private. And so me recording my life in real time as it happens, and then just sending it out to whoever wanted to listen to it, is a big deal for me. So the fact that I would put myself out there, I don't feel like I would have if I didn't feel like prompted to do so. And our motivation has always been to help other people, but also selfishly to talk through all of our problems in front of a microphone. And for some reason, that has really helped a lot. As far as a calling goes, there are a lot of callings that I've really, really loved. And I think the big difference with that is that I've been able to form and make really good friendships within my own community and my neighborhood and my ward. And that's extremely beneficial to me on a daily basis, because those are the kids that my kids play with. It's the people that I see. It's the people that I serve, right? But having this larger community has given me much more perspective and empathy and love for everyone, wherever they are in their own faith journeys, and has allowed me to explore my own ideas, my own thoughts about religion and about humanity in general. And I count that as, I guess it's the macro versus microeconomics. That would be my my large macro view, and I would never have been able to get that without this space.
Thanks, Katie. What do you see the next 100 episodes looking like?
Do we have another 100 episodes in us?
I think that depends on our listeners. What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear more interviews? Do you want to hear specific topics? Do you want to hear just continuing where our story is going, regardless of where that takes us? Really, we want to serve you. So we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, marriageandatightrope@gmail.com.
You can email us, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram. You can go to the Facebook page. We have made not made it, but the members of the community have made a really great safe space in our Facebook group, as well as our moderators. So thank you, moderators, for anyone to come and talk about their problems or ask advice or ask questions. And it has taken quite a bit of a load off of us for people to be able to go there and find friends and to converse with each other. So thank you for anyone who's in the Facebook community that contributes and that continues to ask questions and involve themselves with each other.
If you're listening to this, I think we try to hedge our bets and not give advice, but I think our parting advice here and our only piece of advice in this episode would be find someone else you can talk to. If you aren't very social, you're introverted, you have social anxieties, there are legitimate reasons why that's difficult. There is, for most people, it is so helpful to find another couple that you can talk to. This is a one-way conversation. So if you can find that in the Facebook community, there's that mixed faith map. You can go and see people that live close to you, and you can reach out to them if they've left their email address or Facebook name or whatever it may be. Find those people, find that level of support.
You know, we just finished off our last workshop, and one of the cool things about the workshop is everyone became really good friends because you get to know each other over the 6-week course. And we started a Marco Polo group, and it is so fun to talk about all things that are related to mixed faith and that are not related in any way. And it's been really fun to get to know people on a very personal level and see them bond with each other and get together and have date nights and game nights. And we just love setting couples up together.
It is much, much fun. Thank you all for listening. We hope that this episode was helpful, at least, if not nostalgic. And we will get back to the regularly scheduled program in episodes 101 and beyond. We hope that you have a happy day, a happy marriage. It feels like I'm trying to create a tagline, but I'm not. Let's just say